So this week brought yet another reminder of one of South Africa's biggest problems, which is youth unemployment. The unemployed youth marched to Rosslyn, Pretoria, demanding jobs amid an unemployment crisis. And I just want to say firsthand that nothing tears up my heart more than the situation of youth unemployment, because someone as young as 18 coming into the system and just not really getting any headway, despite the fact that they're knocking on doors, is heartbreaking, because it's not their fault, really. It's really not, because they're fresh out of school, and then it's one of those things that really break my heart, because even I firsthand, with my little minimal exposure to the world and how things work, I've seen the potential that South Africa has, I've seen the potential and what can actually become if we make the right decisions. And the fact that we are here once more and it's just getting worse is truly heartbreaking. In fact, I think to paint the picture of how the decisions are actually stealing away the prospect of these young people. When we say stealing the prospects, the ideology that is, so dominant in our political space, so dominant in terms of how government approaches a lot of things, is really stealing away the prospect and the opportunities from these young people. Hence, now they basically hitting walls. Because I argued on Twitter that why are they marching to Rosslyn and not to, for example, the Lutuli House, as an example. And I can make that argument, but who's to say that they're probably just, it's a tough situation. You find yourself now hitting walls because it's like, where am I going to go? Where am I going to get help? Because every avenue seems like it's futile. But again, to paint the picture of where the ideology becomes basically a thief in terms of taking away opportunities from these young people. South Africa, the world at large, think about this, is not short of people who are willing to start a business. The world at large and South Africa is not short of business creators, people who want to create companies and all kinds of things to be able to hire people. So let that sink in. To make it worse, when companies stop operating in South Africa, when companies leave South Africa and go to other markets, at least 80% of the time, it is not because that person or that company owner or that company was lacking per se. It is because of the environment and the difficult environment that South Africa is for businesses to operate. Before I get to my commentary, I just thought I thought I'd share a couple of clips of what young people at this Rosslyn March had to say about this crisis of unemployment. This is the young people in their voice.
Arakhona ukuphila asisebenzi 370 now live let's know price pack it's 200 rand impuphu ngiyithenga ngani 370 it's not enough kuthi kusebenze abantu laba qhamuka ngaphandle sibe sikhona sila ekhaya
msebenzi namsebenzi mama akibereki kuthi haye haona environment e irahalang mo haye ke nyaka mmereko ke tlile mo haye ke re kolwela ngwana ka ke nyaka mmereko ma South Africa o tlherintse down re youth a ona ntho irahalang go ne re tswa ka Ramaphosa re fa di 350 a rena sara ne ke 350 fela
yo eshwetse go botlhoko byanne as a young lady like nna wa 34 years ke tsoga go seng ke kopa mama gore kopa tšhelete ya dintho tsa o tlhapa while ke na le bana ka mo hape ke survivor ka sasa so no like whatever re tletse mo they said re tontsha ma foreigners not gore re tlisa di memorandum re emetse gore ra tsena mo di femereng sa ma foreigners but ntho e entsahetseng today ha se ntho e leng gore like re ratile like so no South Africa a re menga maoto batho femetsa manskrala le tsona a ware tla re go hamo ra manskrala. And
what I want to say is that even though they've marched to Rosslyn, right, and they were at Rosslyn, I think they went to BMW. In fact, I thought about it. I'm like, what? Oh, I had to remind myself, what about Rosslyn and BMW was in the news early this year? It's when President Ramaphosa visited the Rosslyn plant and BMW was announcing all of their investments and all of that. So I think maybe that's why Rosslyn was targeted to say, hey, you guys have all of these things coming up and you're building this what. We want a stake in that. Maybe that's the reason why they chose too much to Rosslyn. But first and most important thing that I want to state here in terms of my commentary to the situation is that a lot of us are there is kind of like a lot of people saying, hey, government must do something, vote, 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 vote. But I think to go deeper in terms of what we need to then, what is the mandate to government when it comes to dealing with this thing? And my point is clear here. We cannot be hostile to people that have wealth. We cannot be hostile to business owners, to people with capital. And the simple reason is that when you have wealth creators in your country, a lot of them, what those people do, because they've got the money, because they've got the investment, because they've got the capital, they then buy your time. They buy your time as June Hlongwane to say, hey, June Hlongwane, I need someone to wash my windows for me. That is buying my time. I sell my time to these people, time, skills, all of that, but it can be summed up as time. I sell that to them, or I trade with my time to the wealth creators. I get compensation, right? So that is the role of wealth creators in society. They are the ones that are able to buy the time of your citizens. They buy time of engineers, teachers, doctors, without their investment, without their capital. Because remember, government does not make money. Government has no money. In fact, government is an NGO that gets money pumped through the same wealth creators, because they hire you and I. Government then taxes us because of through the compensation we get from wealth creators through income tax. That's how government gets their income. So wealth creators are the most important. It all starts with wealth creators. If you do not have wealth creators, or if you do not have enough people who have capital and investment, what happens is that you've got a lot of people who are just not using their time. They are not able to sell their time, meaning they are idle. That's how unemployment happens. And the more people you have who are idle, especially I often make this reference that we are a population size of 60 million. The more people who are idle and not using their times, not productive, not getting compensation for their skills and all of that, then you have a catastrophe. That is a simple way of understanding why wealth creators are so important, because they will need people to do things for them. They will need a CFO. They will need a CEO. They will need a welder. They will need a plumber. And when they need those people, I can sell my time, meaning I'm productive, I make compensation, you can tax me, and so the cycle goes. In fact, one of the downsides, or the biggest flaws, in my opinion, of a capitalist society, which again, this wealth creation is sort of in line with capitalism. One of the biggest downsides is that capitalism is 100% reliant on an environment for capitalism to thrive, for capitalism to, really, really showcase its potential. We've seen markets or countries, Dubai, China, Japan, shoot up in terms of the economic growth in a matter of 10 to 15 years because they accommodated capitalism. They accommodated the concept of creating wealth in your markets. If capitalism is not in the right environment, it struggles. Hence, in South Africa today, you have people arguing, hey, this is a capitalist system. It's not. This system in South Africa, I would say at best it's 20% capitalism. The rest is socialism. So that is just a clear picture. If it was capitalism, our economy would not be growing at 0.1 to almost negative growth. So the last point I want to make here is, again, the failure of government. Because government, you have to remember, is the fuel, or at least the glue that keeps all of this thing together. Because you've got people, you've got your land, you've got South Africa, you've got where you are located geographically in the world, you've got all of these international forces. Then you've got businesses who want to grow, who want to move forward. You've got young people. The government becomes the glue, or you could even say the fuel, that just makes sure that this entire system operates smoothly and moves ahead smoothly. We are struggling in terms of the fuel here. Government is failing us dismally when it comes to piecing all of this together. The one example is that young people are in the hands of government, so to say. Okay, parents are still involved between ages 7 and say in 18 or 6 and 18. When they start school, a basic education up until they get to matric. Government is very much involved in terms of shaping, making sure that there's enough resources, making sure there's enough books, harnessing skills, and all of that, right? Government has a big role to play. Like I said, parents as well. But in that 7 to 18 year gap, that is preparedness. That is where we prepare people, young people, to be able to tackle the world in the future. If they get to 18 and there's just no signs of, someone who can exist in a company and play a role and all of that, that is the fuel. That means minus from the fuel part, because now you are supposed to make sure that everyone, at least 8% of people who make it through matric, can be placed in some economic zone somewhere. Agriculture, hospitality, they need to exist somewhere. You need to encourage people, because people sometimes, if you give them an option and a choice to work or not to work, because now you're dangling the 350, they will choose 350 until they don't want to do it anymore. Because what you also got from this protest is people saying, we don't want to do the 350 anymore, but that's another problem. Move this 350, cancel that completely, get young people to work, but first you need to get this system moving smoothly. And another critical point when it comes to the fuel point is safety. Our society is unsafe. In fact, we're dealing with a lot of anxiety because of safety concerns. If it's not happening to you, it's happening to someone close to you. If not that, it's happening to your colleague, your neighbor, or you're exposed to these things happening on social media. What do you think is happening in the minds of people who want to start businesses in South Africa? People that are operating businesses in South Africa now, if they are not adding in more costs to their operational costs to wrap up security, they're having to cut down employees and not have people working for them, because now they have to pay this huge bill to have private security looking after their plant and all of that. That is the failure of government, the failure to keep us safe. In fact, I think the ANC deserves a serious punishment for the fact that they have not kept us safe. Zimbabwe, which I know most of us, many people have called them out and said, no, those guys will never recover. Guess what? Because Zimbabwe is a safe society, if they can get their issues right in terms of who leads them, just because they're safe, they can have a far bigger and better economy than South Africa in a much shorter time frame than what we're dealing with now. Because remember, every type of crime you can think of, it's happening here. I was listening to the Daily Maverick sit-down thing, and they had some lady coming from some organization which deals with these, white-collar crimes, where money laundering and all of that. This is the capital for thieves and thugs. Every thief, every thug, every mafia you can think of, this is where the destination comes to. Through our airports, it's happening. And that is just not a conducive environment. The fuel that is needed to get the system moving is failing. So we cannot. These guys must be punished severely. They are to blame. When you see those people protesting there in Rosslyn, you should know exactly where the finger should be pointed. And the question is, where do we stand? Do we stand with these young people? Do we stand with them and support their cry and their vision for a better future? Or do we continue to stand with our cadres, our comrades, because it just feels easier to do? My position is clear. I'm standing with the young people who are hitting the walls and saying, listen, we want better for ourselves. We want to be able to build for ourselves. We want to be able to take care of ourselves. Because another problem, when someone gets to 18 years, I do not care what your race is, where in the world you are born. When someone gets to 18, that person is an independent person. That person must be working. Because they're independent, they don't want to be told what to do, they are having their own agency, their own thoughts. That person needs to be in a job or somewhere, ASAP. Because if that doesn't happen, you start to take away the self-esteem. You start to chip away at the confidence. What are you going to do with the 35-year-old person who's never sat in front of a laptop? Anyway, before you go, hit like to this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Like I said, personally, this is a really heartbreaking story to cover because I know the lives of young people that are being impacted, and it's totally unfair. I can say this, it's unfair that they're having to, be adults in the system that is just so rigid and so held back by some useless Marxist ideologies. The question remains, where do you stand? Whose side are you on? Young people or the cadres?